All right. Well, we're as people are joining, we're going to get started. We're right at just past 12. So again, welcome everyone. I'm Julia Abelson, lead for the Public and Patient Engagement Collaborative, and my colleague Laura Tripp is going to be presenting with me today. So we're really excited to be sharing this work with you. I'm going to start just to take a moment before we get going to acknowledge the traditional territories upon which we gather. In my case, I'm here in my office at McMaster University, which is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations, and within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. And I want to just pause to thank and honor those who were here before us and recognize our responsibility as guests in this land. And in particular, I also want to make a commitment to establish some new relationships with and renew some existing relationships with my Indigenous colleagues here at McMaster, as well as outside of the university. And in particular around the work that we're going to be presenting to today, because I think it certainly has some relevance. So, and we may have some of our Indigenous colleagues with us on this webinar today. So with that, I'm going to just do a very quick overview of the rules. I think people know how this all works by now. The chat box, right, with opportunities for everyone to make general comments or specifically to panelists, perhaps around technical issues. We're probably not going to use the Q&A box, but certainly it is there if you want to focus on that in particular. The chat is what really allows us to be more interactive and to pick up on things as we go through the webinar. And of course that we will be recording the webinar. And so just by way of introduction, as some of you may know, Laura and I are here on behalf of the Public and Patient Engagement Collaborative here at McMaster University. We carry out research and consultation activities to support high quality public and patient engagement in health policy, health systems, and health research, focusing in particular on methods, work, and evaluation. And we also are members of the OHT Central Program of Supports with the Ministry of Health, and is in that capacity that we're here giving this webinar today as part of the OHT events series. And our work with the Central Program of Supports specifically focuses on supporting patient, family, caregiver engagement measurement and development work, and supporting our Ontario health teams with their patient community engagement and evaluation work, of course. And as always, our work is always very much in close partnership with patient, family, and caregiver partners, as well as a variety of health system organizations and research teams. And you can find us at our website listed below. So we wanted to start off just very, very quickly to find out a little bit more about who is on the webinar today. So if we're going to start a poll, so we're going to ask you just to tell us your role, whether you're a patient, family, caregiver partner working with an OHT, perhaps you're a partner working outside of the OHT community. We know there's some of you who are involved in a variety of different roles. You may be staff, engagement specialist with an OHT, or again, perhaps outside of. So if we can just ask you to go ahead and let us know what your role is, so we have that information. Okay, are we ready to?
Answers are still coming in, so give it one more second and then I'll stop it.
Thanks.
There you go. Can you see those results?
All right. Okay, so as we expected, quite a few from the OHT community, which is terrific. Others from OHTs not necessarily working directly on the engagement in the engagement portfolio, and then a number of others. That's great. All right. So just to give you a very quick overview, we have three very specific objectives for our webinar today. One is to introduce the broad principles of program evaluation and how it can support your engagement work, as well as your OHT performance measurement work. We see these two pieces linking very nicely together, and we'll focus on that throughout the webinar. We, of course, want to introduce the Engage with Impact Toolkit. This is a newly developed tool that will hopefully, we expect will be very, very useful to support the evaluation of your engagement work, both across OHTs as well as throughout many other organizations, and certainly on the health research side for those of you who are more involved in engagement work in health research. And then to very specifically explore the toolkit's web-based platform and its capabilities. And so we'll split the webinar into these three components. So just as a very quick refresher, I think anyone working in the OHT realm will be very familiar with this slide, laying out the 8 building blocks, and to just highlight that building block 3, patient partnership and community engagement, is very, very much where we're focused in our own work and our supports work for the OHT community. But I think it's important to, again, recognize the connection between the engagement work that we're presenting to you today and its focus on evaluation and its alignment with building block 8, which is focused on performance measurement, quality improvement, and continuous learning, as well as building block 4 around patient care and experience. So what we're hoping to do today is to give you a sense of how you can use evaluation to support, in particular, your building block 3 activities, but of course also this would align with building block 8, your performance measurement work. So what we think evaluation can do for you in this area is to actually help with your goal setting and benchmarking. Again, many of you may be very familiar with the principles of program evaluation, but some of you may not be as familiar with it. So we think about evaluation supporting engagement work through that goal setting and benchmarking early on, right? What are we trying to achieve with our engagement and partnering work? If you don't have clear ideas about your goals and what you're setting out to do with engagement and partnering, you can't, easily move on into evaluating that work. So it's establishing where we are now, where we'd like to be, and doing, as I say, some of that goal setting and benchmarking. Then you may move on to using evaluation to support continuous learning and improvement in a more ongoing way, right? As you start to carry out your engagement, your partnering work, whatever that might look like for you in your organization, you can use evaluation to assess how well are we doing, right? Again, more in a formative, evaluative way, or continuous learning and improvement. And then finally, you may be starting to look out a little bit further to say, how do we assess the impact of our engagement work more broadly? And that might be at a variety of levels. That might be at very specifically at the individual level, on individuals, on patient partners, on our staff, our clinicians, our leadership team. It may be on programs, including engagement programs and other more service delivery oriented programs, on the entire organization itself or the broader health system. So it's important to keep in mind these different levels, as we'll be coming back to those later on in our presentation. So to get started, and again, I recognize that people may be at a very different points along a continuum of being familiar with principles of evaluation. Some very, very, expert and kind of very, very well versed in this, and others, this may be language that they're hearing for the first time or not be nearly as familiar with. So again, when we're thinking about evaluation, we often want to start with just setting our goals for evaluation. Really important to do this. Why are we trying to evaluate? What are we trying to achieve with our evaluation, and whose goals are they? And here, it's really important to think about all of the different members of your team who may have different ideas about what the purpose or goal for evaluation should be. Second important component is what aspects of engagement are we going to evaluate, right? Are we looking at it at a programmatic level? Overall, how is our engagement program, our partnering work going at a governance level perhaps, or more around specific activities? And then how do we do this? What are the most appropriate tools for the job? Moving to the next level, then you might be more focused in saying, okay, are we really looking at evaluating the process and experiences of engagement, more of that formative or kind of continuous learning, continuous improvement work, just to assess how well we're doing? What was the design of the engagement work and the execution done well? Or are we moving more towards measuring impacts of the engagement? And certainly you can be looking at both. But you clearly, would typically start with looking at the process side and experiences of engagement, perhaps before you start to move into looking at measuring impacts. And then again, when we start looking at the approaches and tools that you can use, there are a variety of them. We often think of surveys, but there's certainly many other approaches to collecting data that helps you with your evaluation work that may include interviews. You may have a lot of documents that you can use as a source for your evaluation work, case studies, or even trials. And so we're going to move now to our second poll question, which is just to get a sense from the group as to where they are at with evaluation in their organizational context. So at what stage is your OHT or organization at when it comes to evaluating patient, family, and caregiver engagement? Please choose one of the three options provided. Okay, so many at a very early stage, just starting to think about it. Okay, so that helps us get a sense of where people are at, and obviously a much smaller group who are really a little bit more experienced with this. Terrific. That's very, very helpful. And so because many of you are very new to this, as you're hearing the next portion of the presentation, you might want to be thinking about what would help you in your organization, in your role, to actually really use the tool that we're going to be presenting to you today. So this is very much an overview, kind of a high level presentation, just to give you a sense of what's out there. And we're going to take you on the tour of the website, but we know that there's likely going to need to be some follow-up to this presentation that we're planning. So I'm just giving you a hint now to be thinking about what would be most helpful to you. So now we're turning to the portion of the presentation where we're going to walk you through how we built this Engage with Impact Toolkit. What were the key elements? And then we'll walk you through each of these in turn. So first, a few words about the background and key contributors. So where did this whole initiative come from? Our guiding principles for the work. We're going to focus very specifically on, for a good portion of our presentation, on this whole notion of impacts. What are we talking about when we talk about impacts? What are the different categories or ways of thinking about impacts? How do we then measure impacts? And then we'll walk you through our online resource. And so our work with in this area started with really predated us coming into working on this. Ministry of Health initiated a working group, a provincial working group, where people who were very interested in starting to think more in a more advanced way about evaluating all of the great engagement work that was happening in a variety of organizations. So in fact, this predated our OHT world. When the OHTs were established, we were asked to come in to carry on with the work that had already begun. And we're asked to work with a group of about 30 patient partners, researchers, health system, organization and government specialists, all who were really interested in and were spending a lot of time, or very focused and had expertise in the area of patient, family, caregiver engagement, or in its evaluation, or both. And so really a nice, very kind of interdisciplinary team of people, all with very, very terrific perspectives that they brought to this work. And so this working group met, it was very much a pandemic working group. We had one face-to-face meeting, and then all meetings from that time on until last October were held virtually. Our mandate was very clear. We wanted to collaboratively develop a patient engagement evaluation resource. To be honest, it started a little bit less ambitiously, with more this idea of a framework for evaluation, some measures, some indicators, just kind of a set of indicators and measures that could be helpful. But as the work continued on, the working group was quite emphatic that we needed a resource that would be more than just a set of, measures and indicators that would help people actually work through how to use these things, not just hand them a menu of things that they would need to figure out how to use on their own. So the other important element to the mandate was that it would be geared towards users who would be from a broad range of Ontario health system organizations. And these would be people who would obviously be within the OHT community, but also in many other organizations. And frankly, and there may be people on the webinar who are from outside of Ontario, frankly, the relevance of this goes beyond Ontario as well. And so the other, important principle in this was that we would be building on existing evaluation tools and resources. As some of you know, we've done other work in this area. We're very much keen to build on it, not replicate or duplicate. And so we certainly had that principle in mind, but we're explicitly emphasizing this, beginning to think about measuring impact in a more sophisticated way. And what does this look like? So our guiding principles for this work, and again, our working group was very, very firm about this. They wanted this to be practical. Whatever comes out of this needs to be practical, not overly technical or academic, needs to be accessible and easy to use. Again, with a broad range of users in mind, very much menu driven or based on modules. The idea of reaching people and organizations where they are, where, as we know on this webinar, people at very different stages in their work with evaluation. So we need to actually come up with a resource that's going to help people no matter where they are, and that it would be relevant to different stages of development, certainly in the OHT context and or maturity. And that it would also align with other relevant activities, that it wouldn't be kind of set aside on its own, but would align with other relevant activities being carried out within the OHT space. Obviously, engagement requirements, the quadruple aim, OHT performance measurement requirements. So all of these principles were what we had in mind as we were moving through our work. And I really just want to pause here to really thank again. I know some of the members of the working group are on this webinar, and I appreciate you coming. And really, it has been an incredible experience working with these individuals. They've been very, very fun, but tough to work with. Really, really wanting to see a good product to come out of this that would be used. And I'm hoping that that's what we've achieved. So I want to thank those working group members. Okay, so now we're moving into kind of the heart of the discussion here, where we actually talk to you about how we identified the impact categories and items that make up our Engage with Impact tool. And so I won't spend a lot of time on the methodology, but I just want to show you here in this visual that it certainly proceeded through a number of phases or stages. So we, of course, began with a literature review. What do we know? What can we gather from the literature? Anything we can find about impacts and what they help us with. We took that to our working group at one of the very first meetings and said, what do you think of what's out there already? We had some really good discussion about that. We then felt that we needed to actually go beyond. This was a group of just 30 people. We wanted to go beyond and do a little bit more work to get a sense of perspectives on impacts from a broader range of stakeholders. And so we then introduced a methodology called concept mapping, which includes 3 phases of brainstorming, sorting, and rating. I won't get into the details of each of these phases, but as you can see here, a lot of incredible content was generated through this concept mapping methodology. So I'm really glad we used it. We generated over 200 items through that initial brainstorming stage. We had to kind of look at them, sort them, discuss, combine, refine. There were certainly some duplication, and then went through a rating stage. And then the final stage in the blue area at the bottom, we actually took all of this back to our working group and discussed the results. We did further kind of sorting, refining, and then came up with a final a short list of items across 8 domains. These are impact domains or categories, which we're going to walk you through now. So there's a lot to this. I think, as you'll see when we start showing you the website, it'll become a little bit more accessible, I hope. But there are now in our final product 8 impact categories or domains. that have 33 items that allow you to go on to measure, the impacts themselves, one per domain, and then, 25 supplementary items across each or all of the domains. And that makes up our toolkit. So first, to walk you through this first piece of the work, what are our domains or categories and levels? And so you may remember a few minutes ago, I talked about this idea of engagement impact at different levels, at the people level, the programs level, organizations, or health systems. So we took that and we thought, okay, well, what are we really talking about in terms of these concepts of impact, right? They can happen at different levels, but what are they? And so our concept mapping and all of our work with the working group members achieved this set of 8 impact domains: knowledge and skills, confidence and trust, equity and inclusivity, priorities and decisions, effectiveness and efficiency, patient-centeredness, culture change, patient outcomes and experience. And as you look through those 8 categories, they certainly should resonate with you. These are really important concepts that we want to capture. But just think about this is in the context of, we want to measure the impact of engagement and partnering. All of that engagement work, co-design, whatever it is we're doing, the impact on these impact domains, right? So it could be impacts on knowledge and skills of individuals, patient partners, staff members, the confidence and trust of those individuals. As we look through the other domains, we start thinking about perhaps at the program or organizational level, or even at the health systems level. And so before we actually take you into the website itself, I just want to give you a bit of a preamble of what you're going to see. So looking across this slide, it shows you the domain. So on the left, knowledge and skills, and then confidence and trust. And then within each of the domains is our core item, right? That allows you to measure that impact domain. So in the first case of knowledge and skills, patient, family, and caregiver partners develop new or improve existing skills as a result of their involvement in the engagement and partnering activities. And then you may think, well, there are perhaps other things we want to look at here. And we have a focus on staff gaining new knowledge, and patient, family, caregiver partners increasing their knowledge of the health system, right? So different ways of thinking about how we actually measure the impact of engagement and partnering on knowledge and skills. So I'm just going through that one as an example. We're going to walk you through these in turn. So to show you, we have on our website, and these are simply screenshots from the website, each of the domains, and then covering the items, core and or supplementary. Okay, and you see here, culture change was the one domain that generated the most, the highest number of items. And again, this comes out of our sorting and rating phase, where we had people actually, gave the highest ratings to some of these culture change items, felt they were very, very important to have captured in our tool. And then the all-important domains of patient-centeredness and patient outcomes and experience. After all, we need to be thinking about the kind of further out impacts would be on outcomes and experience. They're quite hard to measure, and we don't have very many of them, but as a starting point, we have some, but clearly very important impacts that we want to be measuring. So I think we're ready now to move into the tour of the website, and Laura's going to walk us through this. And just so you have here as well, you can actually go onto the website yourself if you'd like. The website is live, but I'm going to turn things over to Laura now, and she is going to walk you through this.
Great, thanks, Julia. I'll just share my screen so that you can see me as I'm walking through the website. So hopefully you can all see that now. So this is the home page of our website. This is where Julia gave you the address. This is where you would land. And the beginning of the website includes a lot of information that Julia just went over. So what the purpose of the website is, and who developed it, and who our working group was, and a welcome video. And then as you scroll down, you'll see that we've split the website and the toolkit into 5 separate modules. So we have the planning, tailoring, selecting, collecting, and refining modules. And the thinking is that you'll start with planning and work your way through, though you may have to skip back again as you're going through and changing your work. So I'm going to walk us through all of the modules just to give you a sense of what's in here. So you can access them from that home page. You can also access them all from the top of the website. This menu is along each page. So our first module is the planning for evaluation module. The goal of this module is to determine your readiness for evaluating the impact of your patient, family, and caregiver engagement work, and to help you think through the steps you'll need to take to prepare for this work. So you'll see we have different pop-ups with different information talking about what is impact in evaluation and are you ready to evaluate, setting your goals, who should be involved, who should be on your evaluation team, and then what to do if you're not ready. So I'll show you, I won't go through all of them because you can look at them on your own, but going through the setting your goals, if you look in here, you can see we talk about all the different evaluation goals that you'll want to set before you start your work. But we also have questions to get you to consider whether impact evaluation is right for you at this time. Some groups may not be quite ready for impact evaluation and may be in an earlier stage. So these are some questions we suggest thinking through. If you're not ready yet, there is a section of the website talking about what you could do if you're not ready and what steps you could take. On each of the modules, we have a section called Action Steps and Resources. And on these steps, you'll find the sort of key steps we think you should take in the module and some supports to help you with that work. So for this first planning module, you'll want to describe your evaluation activity and the program you'd like to evaluate. And we do have a worksheet to help you with that process, and then additional resources to support the step. And you'll also want to identify your evaluation team. So if you were to click on the worksheet link, it would take you to this, which is your first worksheet to sort of assess your readiness. So this goes through all the questions that were asked in the module, and you can download it and type in your responses so you have a record of that. Once you've gone through this step, and if you're ready to move on, the other thing that is on every website, every module page is a training video. So you can click on this video and it'll give you some additional information about what the module is and how to use it. So once you've gone through the planning module, if you're ready to move ahead, you can click on Tailoring. Tailoring is our second module. And the goal of this module is to help develop your evaluation plan. So this will include creating a logic model for your engagement initiative. We're really suggesting everyone take a logic model approach to evaluation because logic models are really helpful tools to help you think through your program's goals and activities and expected impacts. So in the module itself, we have an example logic model with some questions that you'll want to think when you're thinking through each step of the model, and an example logic model as well as another training video. And as with the first module we looked at, we also have our key action steps and resources section. And in here, we do have another worksheet that you can use to develop your logic model and other resources and links that, for supports about logic models if you need more information. So again, we have the worksheet that you can complete and print or save. And then at the end, as you work through the questions, you'll see there's an actual template that you can fill in so that you have a one-page summary of your logic model that you can share. So once you've developed your logic model, the third module is the selecting module. This is the one that Julia showed you some screenshots of already. And this is probably the biggest of our modules. This is where we show the domains and items, and the goal of the module is for you to work through this to identify which items you would want to include in your evaluation. The logic model you created in module 2 would help you with this process. So again, we provide information about what the potential impacts are and how we've created the 8 domains with the 33 items. And as Julia mentioned, each item relates to either the people, program, organization, or health system level. And you'll see these letters next to them to identify which level it is. So this is the screenshot Julia showed you. So it talks about the domains, the core items, and the supplementary items. So again, for knowledge and skills, confidence and trust, that patient, family, caregiver, partners, and staff see increased value. And they have the labels to show you which level they're applying to. So they're all listed there. And then when you get to the end, again, you'll have a training video, but we also have another worksheet to help you with this and a domain and item database. So you click on the domain and item database, it will take you to this tool. So this can look kind of overwhelming at first, but we'll walk you through it. So this is all of the domains that we talked about. So the 8 domains, the level that each item applies to, and the item. So this is the information that was on the website, but we also include a sample survey question, a sample interview question, and then information about how you could use document review to measure each of the items. So this is the sort of working document that you will use as you're developing your evaluation plan and picking the items you want to use. There's a few different ways you can look at this database. So this view has all of the items. And again, the core item is noted on the far left for all of the different domains. You can also go to the top left and click on where it says all items. And then you can look at it in different ways. So we could look at just the core items where it would have the core item from each domain listed. You can look at it by domain. So either looking at culture change, for example, it would only have the items for the culture change domain. Or you can look at it by the level. So if you knew that you wanted to evaluate things at the impacts at the program level, you could click on that and it will show you all of the items within all of the domains that apply to the program level. There's also a search button at the top right here, that you can click and search. So if you wanted to come up with an item that had to do with trust, for example, you could click there, type in the word trust, and it would pull up all of the items that would fit that. And again, we also have a worksheet that will help you with this process that you can link from here. And the training video also goes through this in detail in case people need a refresher of how to actually use that database. So if we go back to the top, the next module is the collecting module. So this is once you've decided what impacts you want to evaluate, and you're actually trying to decide what your sources of evaluation data will be. So the final output of this module will be your really detailed evaluation plan. So we go through the different evaluation data sources, again, reminding you that it's always good to have more than one source of data. So you may want to do surveys and interviews or document reviews all the way up to potentially trials. If you click on these items, they'll give you more information about what the data collection tool is or process is, with case examples of how they've been used in other settings. Sorry, froze for a minute. And then if you keep going down, it'll walk you through creating your data collection plan. So again, once you know which items you want to evaluate, how are you going to evaluate them? Again, encouraging you to go back to the question database and again, providing a worksheet for this purpose. There's another training video here to help you work through this. And then again, your key action steps and resources. So how you can develop a data collection plan, developing your data collection tools, and then collecting your data. In the data collection tools section, we also have a meeting minutes template that you can use to track your interactions across the project or the initiative, so that you can watch how the project unfolds and look for impacts that may be occurring. So if we go back to the top, that takes us to the last module, which is the refining module. So the goal of this module is to help you determine how best to share your evaluation results and to refine your evaluation to prepare for your next steps. So this is once you've identified what your evaluation plan is going to be, you've collected your data, and you're thinking about the next stages. So first, it encourages you to think about what your evaluation results showed you. What are your key findings and your biggest learnings, and potentially what changes should or could you make because of these findings? It then encourages you to think through how to share your results. So at the beginning in stage 1, in module 1, you were asked to think about who your key stakeholders were. So again, going back to that work to see how you'd like to share your results and with who, encouraging you to think about not only how you'll share the information, but how the information will be used and the best format for sharing the information for your different audiences. And again, we have a worksheet that will help you work through this and type all your information in and print it and save it. In terms of next steps, again, we encourage you to think about evaluation as an ongoing process and to think about what you've learned and what you want to do next. And this is when you may want to go back to the earlier modules if you want to continue doing further evaluation, but may need to look at different impacts or refine what you're doing. We have another training video as well here that goes over this in more detail. Those are the 5 modules. The other thing that we have on the website is a section called Tools and Resources. This is where you'll find all the tools that have been developed for the toolkit. So you'll see the list of modules here. If you click on them, you'll see a link to the worksheets that are included in the actual module itself. So if you've gone through the modules already, you know that you're just interested in going back and pulling out a worksheet to have it, you can do it quite quickly there. We also list a number of other resources from other groups that could be helpful for your work here as well. And we'll update that as we go along. And then there's the contact us page if you need to get a hold of us. And that is a tour of the website. So I'll stop sharing and leave it back to you, Julia.
Great. Thanks, Laura. And we are very aware that this is a lot of information to share with you and for people to digest. And so, as I mentioned earlier, our plan is to follow this particular session with some additional webinars, workshops, smaller group meetings, but we wouldn't mind getting a sense from you about what that should look like. So as I asked you, think about what would be helpful to you to help you take this to the next step. And we'll have a poll question about that in a moment. But I just wanted to share with you our next steps for this work before we move to that poll question and then Q&A. We do have a French version of the site that is very close to being ready. We actually had hoped to have it for today, but just finishing some things off. It will be available, we expect by the end of February at the latest. So watch out for that. We are also wanting to collaborate with OHTs and other groups to do some usability, feasibility testing, also expand some of the toolkit capabilities. We have some plans to add some case studies or some examples. We've heard from certainly in our working group discussions, there was a very strong kind of interest and call for us to, give people examples, right? So we're actually working on developing some of those. Also some sample, maybe survey instruments or interview guides, some things to help you with just to make this more usable. But we'd like to actually work with some OHTs to get a handle on how they, their perspectives on the toolkit, what aspects could be tweaked a little bit more. We think we, have a good sense to a point, but only until we actually start having people use it, play around with it, navigate, do we get a good feeling for what's working and what could be improved. So we'd like to hear from some of you who might be interested in doing that work with us. We'll have some limits on how many organizations we can work with, but we've certainly had some initial conversations with some, and they've been very, very helpful to us. As I said, we'll be doing some additional outreach, orientation, and training. And this is where we get to the question for you, right? What additional supports for using this toolkit would be helpful to you? So some options include additional webinars, perhaps on each of the modules. We thought that might work, perhaps some very specific consultations or small group kind of support discussions. Maybe there's some additional written material that would be helpful to you or training videos. Please let us know through this poll what would be most helpful to you.
The responses are still coming in, so give it one more second
Okay.
and then the poll.
Okay. So clearly the first two seem to be seems to be a lot of interest in those, which is great, and kind of where we were heading with some of this, some of our initial thinking anyway. But a good number of you would like to see additional training material. Okay, so lots, lots, and the other we'll get, I guess, noted separately what the specific suggestions are. That's great. Okay, thanks everyone.
In the chat for that, Julia.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, great. Okay, I'm going to close that, and then we'll go to our Q&A, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen so we can get out of that and then start looking. And I assume we can have people actually raise hands and speak if they'd like, but we will be paying attention to, okay, so I'm going to start with Selector Cave, right? So far, link in the chat, yeah. Facilitator notes on running a group work effort. And I guess the other thing I would encourage is if some of our working group members, I'm not at all putting you on the spot to say anything or add to the chat. If you don't want to, that's fine. But if you had anything to add that you thought would be helpful because you are more knowledgeable about this and have been on the tour of the website a little bit more than some of the others who are seeing it for the first time, if there's any, additional insight that you wanted to share, please feel free to do that.
There's a question from Mark, Julia. I don't know if you see that one.
Yes, so great question, Mark. So for sure, and this I think bears a little bit more on maybe the process evaluation work, right? And some of our previous tool development work where there's, a questionnaire, let's say, that you could, administer after every engagement activity. And certainly we've had the experience where, and it actually led to us developing one that was more to be used on an ongoing basis. So if you have a committee, if you have a patient family advisory committee, for example, that meets, routinely, you may not be wanting to survey them after every single meeting. Perhaps in the first, few meetings, it might make sense. But as you, are sort of gelling as a group, you may not feel the need to. Often I advise to think about it around, if you've been working, with a group for a particular amount of time, maybe think about getting a check-in, every few months or once a year, or again, depending on the frequency with which that group meets. So I think it's an important one. There is a concern around evaluation fatigue. And so the advice to mitigate is to, as I always say, think really carefully about why you're going out to evaluate, right? And what are you really going to get from this information that you're collecting? Because I think we can often find ourselves in this very easy trap of, well, we have a questionnaire, we have this great toolkit, we can, just grab things and evaluate. But, the incremental value or benefit from each of these, one at a time, we just keep evaluating is probably not terrific. So I think it's thinking carefully about why you're evaluating, what is the purpose, and are you really going to get that much more out of this extra survey, right, that you're administering. And I know we've worked with some groups who've generated a lot of evaluation data, and they're sort of left with, oh my goodness, I have this incredible amount of material here. Now what do I do with it? So it is important to think about, that issue of frequency and what is the value add of each time you go out to evaluate. So thanks for the question, Mark. It's a really good one. Will there be changes to the competency models used for staff evaluation to reflect these goals? Yeah, so I want to make sure I understand your question, Carol Ann. This is geared towards, this is engagement evaluations, which is very much in a partnered way. So if we're looking at staff, yeah, this isn't only focused on engagement of patient partners. While it is a patient family caregiver engagement evaluation toolkit, the idea is that these are individuals who are often partnering with many other people in the organization that they're working within, right? So it is just as important to have evaluation involve, right, staff members as well. I'm not as sure about the competency models that you're referring to, Carol Ann, but I'm hoping that the brief response that I've given is helpful to that question. Yeah, culture change for sure. Yeah, and certainly some of our items, if you remember back to those screenshots I showed, actually had a focus on staff, right? Staff increase knowledge, skills, or staff perhaps increase confidence, trust, or decisions that staff make as a result of their engagement with, have this effect. So for sure, it is not about kind of separating out or having all of the patient partnering work in parallel to the rest of the organization, not at all. Possibly leverage the community of practice. I don't know which community, there are lots of communities of practice. I don't know if you're thinking of the patient family caregiver engagement community practice aligned to the OHT supports. I don't know if that's the one you're referring to, Catherine. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to Wendy Wu's question. There's a request from the ministry to do the patient and patient engagement surveys. Can your group help to make sense of these requests? I think I'm not sure which surveys you're referring to, Wendy, but I'm happy to try to help make sense if that's something you want to follow up with us about. Key action steps and resources is very helpful. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. And I think this is back to our principle, our guiding principle of trying to meet people wherever they are, right, in this, evaluation space. So if you're early days, really early thinking, you might just want to look at that readiness assessment module, right? But for those of you who are kind of well on your way, you may just want to, move to that key action steps and resources section and say, okay, here, what do I need to do next, right? Here it is all in front of me. Yeah, we tried to set it up in a way that would, again, be accessible to different people depending on also their styles, right, of taking in lots of information. Do you think it's acceptable to have a look at the selecting domains section first before doing the planning and tailoring? Yeah, I would say only if you're, pretty far along and you've worked through those first modules. I think you really should take a look at those first modules around particularly this issue of who's involved in your evaluation, right? I think one thing I'm kind of hearing about in conversations with folks is sometimes it's left, to the patient partners themselves to kind of do the evaluation. I not in all cases is that true, but we hear that, and then, or it may be just, staff who are kind of tasked with the evaluation work or the performance measurement work. My view and our view at the collaborative is this truly should be a collaborative approach. So if you're engaging, patient family caregiver partners in your work, they should also be, at the table when you're designing, thinking about your evaluation and just your overall approach and goals. So I do think those first modules help you with that. And so I thank you for the question, Maureen, it's a great one. Okay, so I missed a question around plans for setting standards regarding engagement that can be measured and compared across OHTs, right? So I think, that's obviously a question, for the ministry. I think we are certainly, as one of the support partners, working very closely to think about those issues of standards. The wording or phrasing terminology we're using is around competencies, and whether that's, we think an appropriate term or not, but thinking about what are the things that, people who are doing this work, whether they be the staff, patient partners, et cetera, need to have in order to be able to do this work well and in a successful way. And so that competency development work is something that we're starting to turn our attention to. Standards are tough, right? There's a lot embedded in that notion of standards. So certainly not something that I'm, looking to move on, but to help with the supports piece and that competency piece. Can I ask a question out loud? You sure can, Sandra. I don't know if I need to enable you to do that, but please go ahead if you can. Okay, Sandra, and just
Yeah, thanks. It's just easier to talk than to type it because it's sort of involved, right? So it sort of goes back to what I think Carol Ann and Wendy are trying to say. So the part of the co-op that they're talking about, or community of practice, sorry, co-op is something else I'm working on, is the RISE one, which you have presented at, right?
Yep.
But the thing we did, Irene and I did a report on, and everyone on the OHTs participated quite a bit, about the experience we had doing the patient engagement and partnership strategy. And a lot came out of that, and that's going to be presented. And I think that's what Wendy's referring to. But I don't want to speak for all OHTs, but I think that a lot of them are still at the point where, you know, like we have our steering committee, and then we have the Alliance Council, and we're just in the process of, we did 2 stages. We did the what are we learning from doing the patient engagement and what it is, and now we're doing what are the next steps, right? But when you're talking about measuring, I think I mentioned this before, is that it would be nice to be able to look at the things that are in your on this website. And this is where it comes to a standard, or more of like something that all the OHTs use. And so what are the key things that we're going to be evaluating, right? And then you go backwards. So like if you're going to measure the impact, then we need to be doing those things. And I know with us, we're still trying to, and someone else mentioned a culture change, we're still at the process where we're trying to get the culture change. And I think even the government is too, because when they send out requests for proposals, nowhere in there does it say specifically engage with patients and partners. So they put together the proposals, they send them out, put together a task force, and then they say, we need your help. And it's like, no. We want to be there when we first get the initial request for something. Then we should be there at the table discussing it. And then when they do the task force updates, it doesn't specifically break down what the patient engagement component would be and how they see the patient and partners being involved. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I want to say.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for adding that, Sandra. And I guess when I listened to you, it prompted something that we've heard for quite a long time from people who use, not this is our new, tool. So not obviously this one, but our previous, the public and patient engagement evaluation tool, which I know a number of you are familiar with and have been using. What we often hear from organizations, individuals, whoever's working with is, wow, this helped me to actually think about what good engagement is. Yes, it's an evaluation tool, a questionnaire, but by actually looking at the elements of it, because it's actually, it's founded on, it's embedded in, it's underpinned by good engagement practice, right? So you build up an evaluation tool that is geared towards, helping people plan, execute, implement, and then evaluate, and try to adhere to, high quality engagement practices. So we've often heard that the tool was, it was good to evaluate, but actually was just really a helpful planning tool. So that may be the other way to think about this, is when you're going through the website, is be thinking of it as a planning tool. And again, it's planning evaluation, but it's also even further behind that. If you haven't actually got a really, well articulated, program of engagement, and thinking about how you actually embed that, properly and have it supported adequately in your organization, I think a lot of the questions, the items, the impact domains, the culture change one is a good example. And that's why there were so many items there. So many of our patient partners in the working group said, that's where we really need to spend a lot of our time and attention. So I think you'll find you can kind of flip it around to be helpful as a planning tool to do some of the things you're talking about, Sandra, not just, only for the purposes of evaluation. I hope that made some sense to people. Yeah, I mean, my hope is that by sharing it today, with 100 odd people on on the webinar who come, from different perspectives and roles and OHTs and outside, that we're building up that momentum and that sense of, maybe we need to be paying a bit more attention to this if we haven't been. I mean, I think people were very honest. They're just starting to, many people on this webinar are just starting to turn their attention to this. Perhaps this will help them also look, at how they even, think about their overall engagement program. So, I mean, certainly we understand that, some perspectives might be you're way ahead, because we're still here. We're at the early stage of even just making sure that proper, good, quality, solid engagement is embedded in our organization. But I think it's never too early to have good evaluation metrics in place and kind of an overall framework, because as I said just a minute ago, it also helps you actually realize, wow, maybe we actually don't have a clear, sense of where we're going with our engagement work. And again, I'm not saying that as that is the case. It just may be the case for some organizations as compared to others. Okay, so yeah, I can't see hands up. So, so Wendy.
Hi. Yeah, I think it's these tools are very, very good and very comprehensive, makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of our struggle is, as Sandra was saying, that the things just get kicked off and people don't plan that ahead of time. We often don't even have a clear scope of what we're doing, and we already agreed to do it, or the OHT agreed to jump in to do it. I think some of the struggle that we're seeing is just, it seems to be no one really understand that or be willing to put in the time and resources to sort of think it through at the beginning, to do it right at the beginning. So how do we raise that awareness at a higher level where these are sort of expected through OHT when they go into something, instead of a become an afterthought? And it's never really done. Honestly, we haven't done, very well thought through measurement. That along with like general engagement with patients and caregivers.
Well, again, I hope that this is, if it is the beginning, I hope this is, we move from here. I mean, obviously, I know that there's a tremendous variability across the OHTs and certainly across other organizations. I've worked with many over the years, and people are at different stages and all kinds of reasons why, they are where they are. So I try to remain, optimistic and kind of ambitious in what we could do, right? What we can aspire to achieve, and hopefully give you some very practical tool to help you get there. So you can think about, asking us to come and talk to your leadership if that helps. There are lots of ways that we can help. We've been very clear in all of our discussions. I know the working group has with ministry, other, support partners, that this has to link to leadership, organizational leadership, right? That's why we talk about it not just being in the building block 3, but it actually connects to, all of the building blocks, frankly. So, we keep doing what we're doing, and hopefully people see it, recognize the value of it, and use it. That's probably, all I can say on that today, but very interested in trying to help your organizations with that work, because I know it's challenging. We've got a couple of minutes left. And I want to thank everyone before we run out of time, and I know people are starting to leave. So I want to thank everyone for attending. I hope this was an informative presentation. As we said, we plan to actually hold additional ones that will be more focused. Maybe one around this whole idea of how do we, connect with organizational leadership around these important principles. So you'll be hearing from us more and soon, I hope, around additional steps from here, and we'll be keeping you posted. So very happy to see so many of you joining the webinar. And with that, I think I'll just give my thanks again and let you get on with your days.